Today on Don't Talk TV, I want to do a quick video talking about Section 1 and very briefly Section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Hello, my name is Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So today's just going to be a short video. I've just been extremely busy fielding all kinds of calls and emails from people who are very concerned about the possibility of losing their livelihood, losing their ability to live in Canadian society due to some of the laws or potential laws that have been announced in recent weeks, especially the announcement on last Friday by the federal government that they're going to force federal employees to receive COVID-19 vaccines. So I've been trying to update myself on the law. As I've said on this channel, I've been a criminal defense lawyer for many years. My entire 16-year career has been spent in the field of criminal law, but I am trying to research employment law and civil law for the constitutional aspects to do what I can to help out in this battle, and hopefully I'll have the opportunity to expand my practice and help others. But in the meantime, I have a huge caseload already of individuals who need my assistance with the criminal court system, but I wanted to give you something. And I also want to say thank you very much to all the massive support that I've received for my channel. We've now exceeded 1,000 subscriptions, which is huge because just a few weeks ago we were still under 500. So that's a big milestone, and hopefully we'll continue to grow. So thank you for watching. Thank you for all the encouraging comments and emails, and thank you for sharing these videos. So as I said in the preamble, what I want to talk about quickly are the limiting factors on our rights in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. As I've said in a few videos, the rights guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms are not absolute. And the example I've used a couple of times is freedom of religion can't be unlimited, because what if you had people who belong to, say, ancient Aztec religion? If the right to freedom of religion were unlimited, they could kidnap people off the street, cut their hearts out, and sacrifice that to the sun god, and then not be prosecuted for kidnapping and murder because of their freedom of religion. So obviously there have to be some reasonable limitations. And those reasonable limitations are laid out in Section 1 and Section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So Section 33, I'm just going to talk about that very briefly. So very briefly, Section 33 allows Parliament or the legislature of a province to expressly declare an act of Parliament or of the legislature, or the case may be that the act or provision thereof shall operate notwithstanding a provision included in Sections 2 or Sections 7 to 15 of the Charter. And it is important that a declaration made under this section shall cease to have effect at 5 years after it comes into force, or such earlier date as may be specified in the declaration. Now, Section 33 is used very rarely. As you can see, it has a 5-year time limit on it. I mean, it's a very unfortunate section. It's something that in the negotiation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was thrown in there by Pierre Trudeau in order to get some of the more reluctant provinces on board, basically giving them a way to opt out of the Charter in certain instances if they wanted to. And Section 33 is a good example of why it's so dangerous to have things like this. In the past, it's always been justified of like, oh, well, the government will only use it in most extreme circumstances. They'll never use it. And then here we are, we're starting to see it being used in recent years. The most recent one being in Ontario. There's an election funding bill that was rammed through by the Ontario Progressive Conservatives using the notwithstanding clause. But I want to look more at Section 1, because that's the one that comes up a lot more frequently. So as we see here, Section 1 reads that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So what is a reasonable limit, and what does it mean to be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society? Well, the Supreme Court of Canada has given us direction on that in the 1986 decision of Her Majesty the Queen in Oaks, and I want to just do a quick run-through of the important parts of that decision and try to explain a bit of how Section 1 operates and what the government needs to do to satisfy that requirement. So I have the case of Oakes open here to page 33 of the Canley decision, and I'll put the link in the show description as I always do. And let's just go through what the Supreme Court said here. It is important to observe at the outset that Section 1 has two functions. First, it constitutionally guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in the provisions which follow. And that's true. Section 1 does guarantee everything that comes after it. And second, it states explicitly the exclusive or only justificatory criteria against which limitations on those rights and freedoms must be measured. Accordingly, any Section 1 inquiry must be premised, or it has to be looked at in the context of an understanding that the impugned limit violates constitutional rights and freedoms which are part of the supreme law of Canada. It is important to remember that the courts are conducting this inquiry in light of a commitment to uphold the rights and freedoms set out in other sections of the Charter. So they give some further elements of interpretation. A second contextual element of interpretation of Section 1 is provided by the words free and democratic society. And the Supreme Court goes on to describe what does that mean? What's a free and democratic society? It says that Canadian society is to be free and democratic. The court must be guided by the values and principles essential to a free and democratic society, which I believe to embody, to name but a few. So this isn't an exhaustive list. These are just a few examples of what's required for a free and democratic society. Respect for the inherent dignity of the human person, commitment to social justice and equality, accommodation of a wide variety of beliefs, respect for cultural and group identity, and faith in social and political institutions which enhance the participation of individuals and groups in society. The court then goes on to explain, as I've said, the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Charter are not absolute, and Section 1 gives you the criteria for limits on the rights and freedoms guaranteed. Now, this is important. These criteria impose a stringent standard of justification, especially when understood in terms of the two contextual considerations that we've just discussed. So it goes on to say that the onus of proving that a limit on a right or freedom guaranteed by the Charter is reasonable and demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society rests upon the party seeking to uphold the limitation. So generally that's going to be the government, but whoever wants to uphold that thing that violates the Charter right, it's on them to prove that it's demonstrably justified. Now, I think that Section 1 is going to be the primary battleground when it comes to litigation about COVID restrictions. And it's certainly, although it would be up to the Crown to demonstrably justify why the limitations they put in place are reasonable and consistent with that free and democratic society, people who are fighting these provisions can't just sit back and not provide evidence of their own. You can't just leave the Crown's experts sitting on their own unopposed. So there'll have to be experts that can show why the government position is not demonstrably justified. Now, the court does say that the standard of proof under Section 1 is the civil standard, namely proof by preponderance of probability. So it's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Although that said, the court goes on to say that having regard to the fact that Section 1 is being invoked for the purpose of justifying a violation of the constitutional rights and freedoms of the Charter was designed to protect, a very high degree of probability will be, in the words of Lord Denning, commensurate with the occasion. So it's going to be more than a simple 50% plus 1. But not as high as beyond a reasonable doubt. And to establish that a limit is reasonable and demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society, two central criteria have to be satisfied. So there's two things that the government is going to have to prove. First, the objective, which the measures responsible for a limit on the Charter are designed to serve, must be of sufficient importance to warrant overriding a constitutionally protected right or freedom. It has to be for a very important reason. And second, once a sufficiently significant objective or important reason is recognized, then the party invoking Section 1 must show that the means chosen are reasonable. So the way of achieving that goal must be shown to be reasonable. So the ends are not automatically justified by showing a sufficiently important means, or the means are also looked at. It says, although the nature of the proportionality test will vary depending on the circumstances, in each case courts will be required to balance the interests of society with those of individuals and groups. The measures adopted must be carefully designed to achieve the objective in question. Second, the means, even if rationally connected to the objective in the first sense, should impair as little as possible the right or freedom in question. That's a very important consideration. The means that are chosen must impair or infringe rights the least amount possible in order to achieve the goal that they're seeking. And third, there must be a proportionality between the effects of the measures which are responsible for limiting the charter and the objective which has been identified as of sufficient importance. And again, that's going to be a big piece of the argument. Is it proportional to take away people's jobs or essentially assault them by forcing medical treatment on them for the end of protecting people from a virus with an over 99% survival rate? These are the arguments that'll happen on a Section 1 analysis, and it'll involve experts on both sides explaining. I mean, there'll probably be argument over what exactly the danger of COVID-19 is, just using that as an example. So that's just a quick overview of Section 1. You can see there's a test that has to be applied, a number of factors that need to be considered. It demonstrates the importance of having skilled legal counsel to argue these things. As always, this video is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, contact a lawyer. Seek out a lawyer who has skill, knowledge, and experience in the area that you need. In my case, it's criminal law, at least as of right now. I'm trying to upgrade myself. If you want to call me for some legal advice so I can speak to you about your specific circumstances, my 1-855 number and my website are listed below. Again, please keep the recommendations coming. I enjoy interacting with viewers and want to give you relevant content that you're interested in, so please send an email to the email address below or leave a comment in the comments section. And if you found this video at all helpful, interesting, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please follow me on social media, and also keep in mind that YouTube isn't the only place this is available. We're also on Rumble, so you can look us up on Rumble, and we're in the process of getting set up with Odyssey, so that there'll be a few options in the event that I'm deplatformed from YouTube.